Hi again, welcome back. It's Laura at Hyperstamper. Today I'm going to show you what I think is a super special junk journal. It's kind of a mixture between two different themes. So let's call it a fusion journal. That seems to be a hip thing now. So I've used a plate from a book that's over 50 years old. You can buy this brand new, but I don't use anything new. So this is true vintage, and it is, of course, Cecily M, who is the queen of fairy illustrations. It's absolutely exquisite, and I used one of the plates in there. These are all fairies from the autumn. And so this one, with the autumn coming up too quickly, this is called the Acorn Fairy, and I love acorns. I collect acorns. I have some of my acorns here just to show off the journal. And I also have these little almost copper looking coppery brass acorns here. They're quite heavy. And I've adorned it on top of this gorgeous vintage book because the teal colors match the colors in here. Vintage doily. I love it. I think it's exquisite. So it's not completely fairy themed, but I've sprinkled fairy ephemera, authentic fairy ephemera throughout, with a whole ton of other surprises of various kinds. So let's take a little look before I put it in my Etsy shop. Move my pretty acorns. There we go. That's through Fairy Halls from 1927. Got to have that in a half fairy themed journal. And this is just a really fun cluster with some 1920s pieces on it. And then in here, if it isn't stuck, nope, it's not, is an early 1900s postcard. That is Edinburgh Castle. I've actually been there. I was there in, I'm not going to tell you the decade, but it was really a long time ago. And then this lovely full color plate here. And it just looked to me like somewhere where a fairy would visit. Look at that beautiful view from this beautiful building. Almost looks like a castle up in the hills. Absolutely gorgeous. And then over here, I've got one of these really fun 1951 graduation pieces. It was under glass, and it was just absolutely massive, so I cut it down. And look at the hairdos. Oh my gosh, can you say beehive? It's so fun. Now this is a very old quill I found in a box of quills, and I love it, and that's on top of an early 1900s children's book page, The Origin of Pussy Willows. So this I pulled from another journal and attached it into this one because I just love those pussy willows. I think they're beautiful. And this is probably my oldest postcard. It is from 1901. It is awesome, and that was going to New York from Berlin, where they made some of the most beautiful postcards in the world in Germany at the turn of the century. This here is just a sweet little fairy forest story here, and we've got the ladybugs and sort of mystical things happening there. This is an envelope from the 1940, and then this is a really great piece here, and this is from the 1930s, and that is Girl Scouts doing their good deeds by cleaning up a schoolyard. I love that. And I just love that. Antique flower. Now this is really cool. You've never seen me show off this before. First of all, this is just a little 1920s funny illustration of a little pig having his dinner. Antique paper on the back. And then this here is a little pocket that I have stuffed this in. It's called Listo-Leds. This was made in the USA. And it says pull out this flap, but if you go the wrong way, it says stop, push in. And if you have it upside down, it says stop and turn over. So it obviously did not want them to fall on the floor. So really, the design really helped you to not make a mistake. Stop. That's as far as you want to pull it up. And then these would have gone into pencils, and they're pencils, if you had a nice fancy pencil, it would have had the casing in it. And sort of like our mechanical pencils today, and this would have been green, so we call them pencil crayons. I believe in America they call them colored pencils. So anyways, that's what those were for. Isn't that cool? I've got to get my little leads back in here. So those are Listo-Leds, and that was the green box. Fun. And yes, that does have some value. You can look that up. Here's a 1950s original bingo card that you can have gobs of fun with those. A lot of people collect them. I did not know that. This is the interior spine of this book, and I just made it into a pretty ribbon decoration. More through fairy halls here. And this is one of these wonderful 1920s educational pieces. The kids would have lined up. I just very gently glued that on in case somebody wants to remove it. So they would have picked the numbers to match the words to match the dots. Kind of fun. And then this is a vintage seashell book, Seashells of the World. And this came from a 1932 scrapbook. It was a couple's honeymoon journey. They went everywhere. And this one is from Massachusetts. Isn't that neat? And then I'm just jumping all over the place here. We've got a 1960s probe card. We've got a vintage Melmar coupon for 25 cents there. And lots of fun colors here. And then this is from the 1890, a guard's watchman's dial and an unused index card, vintage, probably from the 60s. And then this is actually a vintage doily, and I know that because I had the original package from it. I got that in an auction lot. It was pretty cool. This is just a little vintage receipt for breakfast. And this is from the 1890s, I Dare Not Lie, a little story there. And I put some antique paper on the back so you could find more journaling space. And this is from a little children's book from the 30s. Have another one of these wonderful plates here. And the reason I picked this one, see if you can see it. No. Kew Gardens are a fairyland. I don't think the camera can pick that up. A fairyland of color and fragrance. So if it has the word fairy in it, it gets to go in a fairy journal. It's my rule. This is another 1940s iron-on. That would have been ironed onto a pillowcase or a tea towel, even bedding, and then embroidered on. That is a vintage piece there. 1850s Hogarth engraving. This is just a sweet little story here about a kitten and a little girl from the 30s. This is the book of spine of an antique book, Neighbors of Britain. And I saved that from going in the garbage. And then this is a wonderful 1940s card. And this one is for father. And I love that it's got this foil. So if it had foil on it, that was a really big deal. So see, they used the whole piece of foil under there. And so there's a sailboat. There is a vase of roses and flowers. But what's funny is there must have been a message or something in here that somebody cut out along the ways. Maybe probably the original signature was here, the original inscription. And then they cut it out and reused the card, which I love. I think that's just awesome. And I'm almost positive that's exactly what happened there and why that little corner is missing. This is from 1959, and you've got to have mushrooms with fairies, right? And these little mice are having their breakfast on that mushroom there. That's vintage down there. And this is an early 1900s Beatrix Potter plate from her little book here. Look at that sweet little kitten. I love it. And this is maybe one of my favorite things in the whole book. I've been saving this for a long time, but this was the cover of an Ice Capades book. 1952 Ice Cycles, they called it. I just love it. Copyright 1950. And it was a whole book of the Ice Capades. So I'm going to be using some of those pages. But isn't that wonderful? She could almost be a fairy herself. Just give her some wings. I love this page here, The Promise of Dreams from an antique book. And this is from 1929, this photograph, because somebody wrote on the back. And I love it. Look at the car. Look at the car and the two folks outside. And there's, oh, I wish you could see it. Little children standing outside there. Just lovely. I love it. And this is a signature out of a book of prayers, I believe. I got it. It was just all scattered along the bottom of an old used bookstore. So I just picked them all up and the lady said I could have them. That is from a 1940s Theatre World magazine. Just some blank paper here from an antique book chapter page for journaling. And this is from a vintage spice grouping, celery seed. Another 1940s children's book page here. That's the other side of the Hogarth. That is early 1900s. Really sweet little plate there. Mr. Brisk and Mercy. Now this here, it has a statue of a unicorn, and that is from the 1904 book English Garden. And you have to have unicorns when you have fairies and mermaids, which, by the way, I should mention, I always try to put the trifecta in there. This one here is The Forsaken Merman. That is the title of that page. So that's our mermaid. This is from a vintage book as well. I love the palm trees. And this is, oh, so sweet, from a very old vintage book. But look at, can you tell that they are fairies? And it took me a while to see it. You can see tiny little wings here. Can you see them? See the little lines in them? I love it. That makes me so happy. The little teeny tiny fairies there. And little, oh my gosh, so cute. So this is a 1937 5-year diary page. And this is really old antique paper that I just wanted to put in because you could journal on it. I love the original foxing and staining on there. And let's play Find the Fairy. Can you find the fairy here? There she is, right there. I don't know how I spotted it and put it in my fairy folder, but I did. Sometimes I pay attention. This is from a very early 1900s botanical book. Look at that gorgeous photography. It's just stunning. Oh my gosh. And this is from a vintage art book on pastels, vintage map. Even though it looks brand new, it is vintage. And this came from another Theatre World magazine, a different one. And I love it because it's got an advertisement for a Sidney Poitier play, Pleasure of His Company, and down at the bottom, My Fair Lady. Isn't that great? And yeah, oh, I almost thought those were fairies on the back. I was getting very excited. So there we go. That's a neato Pepito thing. And then this is the 100-year-old children's exercise book page. This is from the 40s here. And this is from the back of a 1951 yearbook, Gail Depkins. And I just love that all her friends signed it. It makes me very happy. And then we've got the rest of that and the map, and that brings us to the end. So I hope you love it as much as I loved making it. Hyperstamper.etsy.com. And don't forget to subscribe. See you soon.